Hi, thank you so much for joining us today for another episode of Weekly Wisdom. My name is Bridget Burns. I'm the Executive Director of the University Innovation Alliance.
Hi, I'm Paul Fain. I'm the news editor with Inside Higher Ed.
And each week on Weekly Wisdom, this is Start the Week with Wisdom, we feature a sitting college president or chancellor or system leader who can speak to us about what it's like to navigate in these complex times in the hopes that they can give you a sense of perspective, optimism, or inspiration to start out your week. So that's what Start the Week with Wisdom is all about.
So I'm always excited to be here with Bridget, but particularly so now to revisit my old beat, the community college beat, and a very important institution and source for Inside Higher Ed, the Chancellor of the California Community College System, Eloy Oakley, who's been leading it since 2016. And Chancellor Oakley is also a member of the University of California Board of Regents, which gives him a bit of a view into both the 2 and the 4-year worlds. Good to see you, Eloy.
Great to be here.
Thanks for making the time. We really appreciate it. And especially we have a sense of just how busy it is to do your job. And with everything going on in California and the wildfires and everything, just really appreciate it.
Thank you. That's great. Great to be here always with you two.
Well, let's start with what is going on. You've got a lot right now. So can you give viewers just a sense of what you're coping with and how you're doing?
Well, we're waiting for the locust to land, but beyond that, we're dealing with our now seasonal wildfires. We have a number of colleges that have been impacted. Cabrillo College in the Santa Cruz area has been hit hard. We have several colleges impacted, and this is, for many of them, the first week of instruction. Of course, we continue to deal with the pandemic and the impacts of the pandemic. California, seeing a large number of communities hit very hard. And of course, all of our colleges serve some of our most impacted communities, communities of color, low-income communities. So those communities are also dealing with the economic fallout from the pandemic. The huge unemployment, the loss of jobs, of hours has really impacted our students. And then, of course, you put on top of that all of the social unrest, given all of the issues with the brutal killing of George Floyd and a number of issues that are impacting our communities, and how we need to respond and be side by side with our students as they struggle with these very important issues in their lives. So we do have a lot going on, but it's critical, important work that's happening now. It's what community colleges do the best, which is respond directly to the needs of their communities.
Thanks for that. I'm curious about digging a little deeper in that. I feel like a large part of the national narrative has focused on 4-year institutions. Are they going to open? Are they going online? All the back and forth that has been pretty much the steady beat for the past few months. And I'm just wondering if you can give our viewers a sense of what it's like to lead a community college right now, and how they're uniquely being affected by COVID that you think that is not being really talked about in the national press.
Right. So I appreciate that question, Bridget. And just, for your viewers, just a matter of scale. I mean, we have over 2 million students in the California community colleges. 1/4 of all the community college students in the nation are in our colleges up and down the state of California. So these are a lot of lives that are impacted. Our colleges are in the most vulnerable communities to these crises. They suffer from lack of access to quality health care. They're the most vulnerable in the economy. And of course, as many have witnessed, they are also the frontline essential workers. So that's something that is a point of pride for us in the community colleges, that every time I turn on my TV, I see our students, firefighters, police, EMTs, all sorts of first responders, the folks supporting you in the grocery stores and everywhere you go. Those are California community college students. And so they've been critical in the response to COVID, to this pandemic. They've been on the front lines every single day, but also they're key to the recovery. Our colleges are key to the recovery, and not just California, but community colleges across the nation. Why? Because they reach the most vulnerable communities, those communities that are being hit the hardest, and those individuals that are most vulnerable to the changes that are happening in the economy because of this pandemic. if you recall, we were already experiencing a number of challenges because of the changes in the economy due to artificial intelligence and machine learning and the changes that were already happening. Well, now we've been thrust into the future of work because of this crisis. Our colleges have to be there for everyday working class Americans. We are the ones who support the top 100% of students. And so we should be a priority in the recovery efforts across this nation.
So, we all know now that the impact of this crisis has been disproportionately felt on lower income folks, Latinos, Blacks. But, I think you all were quick to move to largely online. Your colleagues at Cal State did the same. Can you talk a little bit about how that's been able to help you best meet students right now in these very disrupted lives in many cases?
Right. So, this whole crisis has been very disorienting to everyone, to our faculty, to our staff, to our students in particular. So after the crisis hit and, we all had to shift gears and go to some remote platform, first of all, our faculty did a tremendous job of turning on a dime and continuing to engage with our students. But as we were looking at what was going on, the one thing that is most helpful for our students, for our communities, is to provide some sort of certainty, some sort of predictability. And the notion that, we will or won't open in the fall, or what are we going to do, that doesn't help our students. That doesn't help any students. So we tried to make a commitment early on, as early as possible, to just say, we are going to be almost fully remote for the fall semester. I think that has really helped our colleges prepare to engage meaningfully with their students, to ensure that we continue to put equity at the center, to ensure that we can get the equipment to our students that they need to be able to access online or remote instruction. So, and it gives students some certainty. I know all of us, almost all of us, are in the same boat. We would rather not be in the situation, but it's a lot easier to deal with it if you have some certainty about what to expect going forward into this fall semester. And so I'm very proud that our colleges were able to make that commitment early on. And, really for the spring semester, what we're telling folks is be ready for this to continue again. Let's embrace this moment. Let's take advantage of this moment. If things get better overnight, great. But let's be honest about how things are going and prepare to be in the situation for the rest of the academic year.
You saved a lot of time and energy by making that call early. So I'm sure that folks appreciated that. So you and I'm curious, I want to pivot to thinking kind of a bit of a step back. You and I both got our start at community colleges and understand intimately the value and the role they play. But we also are familiar with how four-year institutions may not always understand how to show up as a great partner. And especially because of your UC hat, it's unintentional, but at times. So I'm just curious if you could give a little perspective for institutions. We have a lot of audience members who are at four-year institutions and they're thinking about, how do I show up as a good partner? And I think there's often an assumption that we know what that is and that it's just, good transfer pathways. But I'm curious if you could give us any perspective on what are the things that really exceptional partners that are for institutions, what do they do for their community college partners?
Right. So I think, first of all, the most important characteristic that I've seen is, does the four-year university value transfer students, truly value transfer students, not just for the purposes of gaining more enrollment or thinking that maybe I can finally diversify my student body by getting more community college students into my university, but do they truly value and appreciate the working relationship, the talent that's in community colleges? That sets partnerships apart across the country that I've seen. I know my own experience in Long Beach when I was part of the Long Beach College Promise. Cal State University Long Beach values Long Beach City College students, truly values them. There's a organic partnership. There are people working together. There's faculty working together. They truly want to see the entire community succeed. And so I think that's what you want to find. I think this if you begin from that perspective, there's an openness to working on the things that truly get in the way of students. Yes, improving transfer pathways is important. It's important for us for many reasons. But if you can really get in there and work with your community college partner to understand where are the biggest pain points for students in and around your community, because those are the students that are going to transfer. You know, students stay close by to where they live, particularly low-income students. So finding those pain points, being willing to work together, asking the tough questions, not coming into the room with any ego. You know, I've been in many rooms where, you know, my partners from a selective public or private university come in with their ego as baggage. That needs to be checked at the door, and we need to work on things that matter to students. Where that happens, amazing things happen in return for that community.
So you in the system have been pushing back pretty hard on the Trump administration's take on federal aid and who can qualify for it under the CARES Act. Can you talk a little bit about where that stands and what you'd like to see going forward?
Sure. So, I mean, first of all, I really do appreciate any and all efforts that the administration makes to support college students throughout the nation. However, in the CARES Act, there was an intent to support students at a time of crisis. This was definitely a time of crisis for our students and every low-income student across the country. These are individuals who were hit not just by the closure or the sudden change in direction that they faced in their college courses, but they experienced job loss, they experienced loss of hours, they have family members who were sick, they had lack of access to quality health care. So these are the hardest hit students in all of the higher education infrastructure in this country. So why would the Department of Education interpret the CARES Act funding as to exclude millions of those students? That was, in my mind, profoundly the wrong direction at this time of crisis. We can have a conversation or argument or debate about immigration status or status of students on another day, but let's get in and help these students in this community. So we did file a suit against the DeVos administration. We were able to be successful. We have been distributing CARES Act funding to non-Title IV eligible students. There has been an appeals process. We continue to work through that process, but by and large, we continue to provide that support directly to students. And as we go forward, I hope that Congress and the administration really think about funding on headcount, because that would help so many Americans across this country who are hurting. And these are Americans that are attending community colleges, whether they be in California, Tennessee, Florida, wherever. If we fund on headcount, we can ensure that we're getting the resources to the students that are hurting the most.
Just a quick follow-up on that. It's hard to say what's going to happen in Washington right now, but again, the scale of your system, 2 million students, a state and a country that's in a recession. How big of a need is there right now for some federal aid to help stem the bleeding?
It is, I can't underscore enough how important this is to communities, not just in California, but across this country. The economy is not turning around. The virus continues to wreak havoc in communities of color and low-income communities. Our students are suffering. Their families are suffering tremendously. These are families and individuals who don't have access to the safety nets that many of us who have some privilege can access. These individuals have no safety net. So it's critically important that Congress get back to work as soon as possible on another stimulus package to support these students, these families, and these communities all across America.
Shifting in a slightly different direction, you have been a pretty vocal critic of standardized testing. And I'm curious now, the pandemic has brought about pretty rapid changes in that space. And I'm wondering if you think that it's going to go back after this, or if there are any things that can be done to ensure that standardized testing evolves in a way that it is responsive to your critique.
Well, first of all, I think, you know, the curtain has been pulled back at this point. I think many Americans, if not most Americans, see the folly that is standardized testing now, whether that be with the indictments and convictions of many wealthy parents across the country for doing things that give advantage to their students that many other students do not have, whether it's the mountains of research now that clearly show the impacts to low-income students and communities of color, and just the absolute ridiculousness of admissions offices using standardized testing as any means of determining who gets in. I mean, the reality is we all know now that admissions offices use standardized testing as a way to restrict access, as a way to manage enrollment, not as a way to find the greatest talent that exists in communities throughout the country and allow them access to our finest public and private universities. So much like the University of California has, Oregon State University, countless universities across this country, the curtain has been pulled back. It is time for the College Board, ACT, and others to recognize that they need to shift their role, abandon this narrative, and work hand in hand with those of us who want to better support underrepresented students to find better ways to identify talent in communities and help them become members of this elite group that we consider graduates of public and private universities.
I know the California community colleges have worked hard over recent years to smooth out the transfer pipeline to Cal State and UC. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about how this current time complicates that, and what you'd like to see beyond California that 4 years could do to make it easier for community colleges to transfer amid all this disruption?
Right. Well, my state, or any state in this country, cannot be successful unless we do a better job of ensuring that more Americans not only have access to four-year public and private universities, but complete their education there. Because as we know, the economy is changing so fast. The need to have more individuals with quality credentials in their hands is becoming more and more important. We see income gaps, wealth gaps continuing to grow, and that is predominantly tied to having access to quality public and private higher education. So transfer is an important piece of that. I think many colleges, particularly private, independent, nonprofit colleges and universities have come to see the value in transfer. You know, sometimes mainly because they're losing traditional enrollment, so they're looking for other enrollment avenues. But however they get there, it's critically important. So I'm very proud of the Cal State system. We have significantly improved the transfer pathway between community colleges and the California State University, and now with the University of California, previously with Janet Napolitano, now Michael Drake, big fans of transfer. We've seen increased improvement in transfer. This last year at the UC was the largest transfer class into the University of California ever. And no surprise, this is the most diverse class in the University of California ever. So for all those reasons, I think it's important for colleges and their university partners to continue to put an emphasis on transfer.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
So this is somewhat cheating. So as you know, I was recently asked to serve on a task force for Governor Newsom to help help California think about strategic policy decisions they could make right now that would lead to a more equitable society post-COVID. I would love to know if you have any ideas of any particular policy items or policy agenda items or decisions that could be made right now that would lead to a more equitable and sustainable society and economy and educational system in California post-COVID.
Yeah, no. Well, first of all, thank you, Bridget, for agreeing to serve. It's great to have you working in our state. I think the fact that you've been invited, and not only have you been invited, but many colleagues across the country outside of California have been invited to participate, tells you something about where we're at in California about how we want to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
The key here is that this task force and the emphasis is on how do we recover with equity at the center of this. I mean, we have all been through crisis before, most recently the 2008 Great Recession. We left millions of individual low-income people and people of color behind. We can't let that happen again. So there are many things that we can do. One is, how do we ensure that we're putting a clear focus on working adults that are being devastated in this economy. Their jobs may never be coming back. Many of the industries that we got used to in California may not be recovering anytime soon. And we have to find a way to reskill or upskill these millions of Californians. So that's going to be critically important. Two, that we continue to look at demographics across the state and put an emphasis on those regions of the state that have had huge equity gaps for decades. We cannot recover and continue to leave them behind. So places like the Central Valley, the Inland Empire, the far north, these are places of the state that we have to make sure that we put an emphasis on and give a premium to as we think about the recovery. Because if we recover and we continue to leave them behind, that's just going to make a huge impact. And then finally, you know, in a state like California that prides itself on innovation and IT, we have, you know, thousands of communities that have very little access to quality broadband. That's got to be at the center of this, because the economy, our education systems are built on access to broadband. So we've got to make that a priority.
I agree. Every time I'm in a program where someone's internet lags, or particularly when I'm talking with students and their internet lags, it's like a physical manifestation of inequity. And
exactly,
we have to face it. And I feel like we have to take those moments and recognize that this is happening and it's really affecting students in a really negative way. So yeah, thank you for raising that.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to ask one minor pivot question. So I agree. I think that in particular, we watched millions of people, their dreams were just decimated. Their entire sectors have fallen, and we don't know if they're even going to come back. And I'm just trying to think about how we can leverage the wisdom of our faculty who study and teach about different sectors all the time. How can we position them to help us anticipate how we can shift our course offerings to better equip individuals to pivot as we shift them into a digital economy? I'm trying to think of kinds of conversations in a virtual context that we need to help faculty, we need to embolden them to have right now.
Right. I think that's such a great question, such an important question. I mean, we could literally talk for the next hour just about this topic, because one, you know, just in the span of these last few months, we've seen how important it is to equip our faculty with the understanding of technology, how to engage with students in different ways, how to leverage technology right now. So just the professional development angle is so important. But you layer on top of that now all the angst. I mean, one of the things we have to remember is Americans continue to lose confidence in higher education. So how do we turn that around? We need to ensure that students see themselves when they walk in a classroom. So in California, we're working with our faculty, our statewide academic senate, our labor leaders to improve the diversity of our faculty. We've all agreed that that's got to be a priority. Our students need to see themselves in the classroom. Two, we need to ensure that we're providing our faculty with as much support as possible. Our students have a myriad of challenges, and we need to ensure that faculty have access to support services that they can help our students gain access to, and to help them continue to not only go to school, but to finish school. So there's a number of things that we have to do. And then a final thing, if you think about it, community colleges serve the role of training and educating law enforcement and other first responders. Our faculty have a direct role in preparing the police officers of the future. We have to take the responsibility of looking at our curriculum and ensuring that we're creating the right culture, the right cultural competencies in our curriculum, so that we can have better policing in the streets. That our communities are the most justice involved, however you want to call that. They are interacting with police all the time, and we've got to improve that for our students. And so we have to take our part to improve the curriculum, to improve the instruction in that area.
So obviously a lot of challenges right now, more than usual, but a lot of change too. Any change that was in the works that this is accelerating that you're excited about? And any movement that you've really seen across this huge, important system that you feel like we were going to get there anyhow, but we're going to get there sooner now?
Well, in this craziness that we wake up to every single day and turn on the news, I think the one thing that gives me hope is that we're no longer talking about the future of work. We have been thrust into the future of work, and now we have to respond. I mean, if you think about it, a year ago, if I would have told you, Paul, that we're going to completely convert, all of our faculty are going to convert almost every single one of our classes to online, you would laugh at me. But here we are. We have converted. We are learning new technologies. We're leveraging new technologies. We're learning a lot more about learning science. These are all good things that will help us be more resilient institutions going forward. And then we think about things like, the fight over Calbright. Well, now Calbright is positioned to help those millions of unemployed workers connect to employers and give them the skills that they need. So I'm excited about those things. I'm excited about the way we're positioned. I'm excited about the conversations that we're having. And I'm excited that we're taking leadership. And this is true of every community college across the nation. And I don't want to speak about my colleagues in the four-year system. They do amazing work as well. But our faculty and our staff are taking leadership in this moment of crisis. And I couldn't be more proud to be part of that.
Wonderful. We just want to wrap with one question that actually just came from the audience, which is, how will students feel part of the college community if they're online? Is that important? And I would just, I would add a little nuance to it. And is there anything that you're doing right now? We all learned a lot spring term, but are there any things that you're doing now that are better supporting engagement and community online, or any lessons you learned that you are now implementing to help ensure students feel really supported and connected?
Right. No, I think that's critically important. That is a huge priority in our system right now. First, the one thing that we learned from the spring was that we have some amazing faculty that were already doing great work engaging online. We had already started to ramp that up. Now, they may have been in the shadows before, but now they are front and center, providing professional development for thousands of faculty across the state. So this is a critically important piece. We're investing a lot in professional development. Engagement is key, whether you're in person or online. I mean, you can have a pretty poor engagement in a brick and mortar institution, and you can see an amazing online engagement opportunity. So keeping students engaged is key. We're evaluating a lot of different technologies to help our faculty do that. And we're providing a lot of professional development, investing a lot in professional development of our faculty, because that is key. Keeping students engaged is going to be the key going forward. And that's got to be, we have to do that with urgency, because who knows when we'll be out of this crisis. And I doubt that the brick and mortar experience will ever look the same again going forward.
That's perfect. Perfect way for us to end. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us today. You continue to be a leader and an inspiration to fellow community college leaders, but all the rest of us in higher education as well. And we so appreciate your passion for students. So we will let you go back to doing, I'm sure, not actual firefighting, but a bit of it right now. And so thank you so much for the time. And for those of you at home, thank you for joining us. And next week, we're going to have our friend, Dr. Kim Hunter-Reid, who is the commissioner for the state of Louisiana, the commissioner for higher education, on Monday at about 11 a.m. Pacific and 2 p.m. Eastern. So stay tuned for that. And once again, thank you, Eloy. Thank you, Paul. And everyone else, have a wonderful week.
Thank you.
Thank you.